Per usual, living on this channel for educational purposes only is not intended as financial advice. Let's take a look at some altcoins today. I'm recording this a few days in advance, but most of what I'm going to say isn't going to affect any analysis for the week because we'll have to see some pretty big swings in order for most of the altcoin market to get bullish. We're just now scraping the bottom of bullishness on the USD pairs for alts, but on the BTC pairs, we're still falling down the endless well towards the center of the earth for many of them. And you can see that obviously on dominance. Dominance, along with any trend metric you prefer, I prefer the cloud, isn't going to lie to you. When this flips bearish, it should be a better time to trade alts. That's when you expect alts to outperform BTC. What I expect here is a push for BTC into the 100K range towards the end of the year. And then I expect alts to start to do better. So first we need to see bullishness on BTC USD, and then we need to see weakness on dominance, which would basically be overbought conditions, maybe a spike into like 60, 61, 62, something like that. But nothing about this trend on dominance is bearish at all. Continues to be very favorable for anything named BTC and not everything else. It's really black and white. It's that simple. There are times in dominance's history where it hasn't been this obvious. Look at 2019, look at 2020, very trendless, very range bound. And then 2021, obviously favorable towards things that weren't BTC. That's alt season. That's what you're waiting for. So what you're really waiting for is something on the 3-day cloud to be bearish, aka dominance below the cloud. You have none of that yet. So it just isn't time for alts broadly. Total 2 has pulled up quite a bit on the USD side of things, which is good if you're sitting in alts, I guess. The issue here is going forward, even if Total 2 is bullish, Total 2 may not outperform BTC. I'll look at Total 2 BTC in a second. But this is where people get bamboozled a little bit because they think that they are doing well, which sure, you're doing well, maybe individually, but not on a relative basis. And you're exposing yourself to more risk, more volatility, both on the upside and the downside. So for Total 2, still below the cloud, still below the 200-day moving average. This week, if Total 2 could get back above $1 trillion, that would be something to watch. That's probably going to take a little time. And then beyond that, the 200-day moving average. I'd guess it would be easier, if you had to make a guess, to go from 500 to $1 trillion versus $1 trillion to 5 trillion or something like that, or 2 trillion. I do like that we're breaking out of this wedge type structure, potentially. It's a little early. We'll see what happens this week. And I'm going to talk about a lot of non-alt things to watch for this week on the legacy side, other than liquidity, just because everybody's kind of focused on liquidity, and that's fine. It's a great metric, but there are other things you can look at that correlate with liquidity that aren't liquidity, like stablecoin circulating supply, which continues to increase beyond all-time highs, specifically Tether. USDC is flat. So Total 2 is still in bearish territory, but it's on its way to recovering. What you don't know if you're bullish Total 2 here is whether or not you've got 3-6 months of sideways before some sort of bullish rally. You just have no clue. There's no way of knowing. Even if we get back above the cloud, we could still range for quite a bit of time. And this, just like dominance, is not going to lie to you. Pick a trend metric, pick a high time frame. It's been bearish on the cloud since 2022. It's been below the cloud mostly since late 2021. And we've almost squeezed all of the move from 2021 out of this metric. Now we're not back to 2020, 2019 lows, but we've given up all of the gains from 2021 for the most part. Obviously, this can keep ranging. This can go lower. At some point, the relative value plays kick in and things start to do better just based on that. Nevertheless, the trend is still bearish, still very far below the cloud. And as I'll talk about with some of these legacy charts today, ideally what you're looking for this, which is another year of sideways. You want to see something, because I don't think we're going to get a V bottom. Now we might get a V bottom back to this level and then a horizontal range for a little bit of time, making some sort of mega inverted head and shoulders. But that's a trade to take. This is nothing. This is, you hope it bounces here. Everybody trades their own book, and I'm certainly not betting on some sort of alt bottom here yet. It's just a little too early, and we're not above the 3-day cloud, so that's obvious. Something else to watch for on the list, on the checklist of bullishness, would be ETH BTC above the weekly cloud, above the 50-week moving average. Either this is going to take a lot more time, or ETH BTC is going to magically bounce back to 05, 06, 07, which is unlikely. Again, look at 2020. This was a bottoming process for months into 2021. So in my mind, we are still somewhere in 2019 territory, just based on where this sits relative to the cloud, relative to the 50. And if ETH BTC is having a hard time getting bullish, odds are pretty good that most alts are having a hard time getting bullish. Even with an ETF, ETH BTC has been unable to just hold sideways against BTC. ETH ETFs have also had almost no inflows, which certainly is not helpful considering ETH is just hemorrhaging AUM. So this continues to look very bearish. First things first, are we above the 50-week? No. That's the first thing to watch for. Are we at least in the weekly cloud? No, we're still swimming in the abyss way below. So it just needs a lot of time. Even on the 3-day cloud, I'm just picking these timeframes because they have been strictly correct since 2023. You're not getting any fake outs here above the cloud randomly. At the very least, just get above the 3-day cloud. Anything, right? We're just not there yet. So at any point on this journey downward, you could have said, I think this is the bottom, this is the bottom, this is too oversold, it's got to bounce here, whatever. But we're not seeing that yet. We haven't. We just really haven't. At the very least, you want some sort of pattern or something, a div, falling wedge, triple bottom, double bottom, anything to help you out. And we're just not there yet on ETH BTC. Total 3 on the weekly using the cloud is a little bit more interesting. This is excluding ETH. Now let's say, okay, we think ETH is particularly bearish. So let's look at total 3. Total 3 is in the cloud. It's got basically the Solana setup, this cup and handle setup, almost through the weekly cloud. You'll notice total 3 doesn't typically take off until like 250 days after halving. So we're still getting there. That lines up with Q4. One thing to watch for here would be a move above 850 or whatever that is, whatever the horizontal resistance would be for a new local high. You don't need to make a new all-time high per se to be convinced, but that just goes to show you on most of these charts, there's so much room to just be sure that this is bullish again. Even if you think this is the case, you can size that down. You can not use leverage. You can start nibbling, right? If you're really convinced this is the bottom, and just wait for more confirmation, because if this is truly going to be bullish, it has a ways to run from here, and you can afford to wait. You can afford to wait 10, 15% if you think it's going to run 200% over the next year. And it's not clearly bullish just yet. It's not even above the weekly. Total 3 BTC, also very, very bearish. If anything, this is hinting at some sort of multi-month, almost year-long falling wedge there. So again, if you think this is it, then yes, start nibbling, start DCAing, start adding. But the trend is not on your side yet. And you could bump this down to the 3-day or some other appropriate time frame and wait for a breakout there. But very clearly, this has not been bullish for quite some time. Even in 2019 through 2021, this did have a revisit of the low eventually, despite popping up. So there's a planet where total 3 over BTC could be a successful falling wedge and pop up to the cloud and then get denied again, going back down. And likely because this is further out on the risk curve than even total 2, total 3 broke out over a year after BTC's halving. So watch for the div, watch for the wedge, see if this starts to break up, and then gain confidence, add to positions. This is total 3 over BTC on like the 2-day cloud, right? You really just have to wait. I'm going to show a bunch of charts. I talked about Zoom and Peloton randomly last week before they popped up, and then they popped up. That's what you want to see on alts. We haven't even seen that yet. And you're going to see that on this type of time frame with this type of chart. You will see a higher high to, I don't know, 0.55 or whatever it is on this metric. That's what you want to see. Just any signs of life whatsoever. Maybe a little Adam and Eve W bottom down here, but we haven't seen strength yet. It's just been nothing but weakness relative to BTC. And if you're not beating BTC and you haven't beaten BTC for months, then there's just no point. You're losing money if you're holding alts relative to BTC for the most part. Others, very similar. Others is excluding top 10. Typically does best post 250 days after halving. That brings us into Q4. Again, you've got the case for a cup and handle. You've got the case for some sort of falling wedge here. And on the USD side of things, not quite ready, but definitely something to monitor into Q4 throughout Q4. The cloud telling you stay out. There's no evidence for bullishness. But what you really don't want to miss is what happened in November 2020 with the breakout on the weekly cloud of others. That's where you want to be sure and you want to be positioned and ready to go, because this could keep chopping around for another 3 to 6 months, right? And you're just losing to BTC. So if you're trying to get the most bang for your buck, if you're trying to time this appropriately, and that's what TA is all about, you're waiting. You're waiting until you see some signs of strength there on the weekly chart. On the USD pair and on the BTC pair also, not bullish yet. But what you'd really want to see is very similar to what you saw in 2018 through 2021, which is a clear horizontal break to new higher highs. And that would be up here, whatever this is, 0.25 or something. You'd be back in the cloud at the very least. So yes, this could be the bottom. Maybe it's not. Maybe it chops around for another 3 to 6 months. You have no idea. And there really isn't enough strength here on others relative to BTC, at least for me, to make any big alt trades over BTC. It just doesn't make sense. Wait for the pitch, wait for the easy layup. That's what makes sense to me. Before you go any further here, let me mention today's video sponsor, Kraken Pro. Kraken Pro is a complete overhaul of the Kraken trading experience with a one-stop shop for advanced professional traders. Kraken Pro enables efficient trading execution across multiple markets with a UI that allows for unique optimization tailored to your trading style. You can check out Kraken Pro with a link in the description of this video. Not investment advice. Crypto trading involves risk of loss. Cryptocurrency services are provided to U.S. and U.S. territory customers by Payward Ventures Inc., PVI, DBA, Kraken. Looking at BTC, again, this is Sunday, not Wednesday, but zooming out, right? Just because realistically we haven't done anything for the past 6 months on BTC. Zooming out, what do you really want to see for BTC? You want to see a new higher high. You want to see anything above 70. Then yes, BTC alts will be bullish, but will they be bullish against BTC is the question. I think initially there's going to be some trouble with alts on a relative basis being as bullish as BTC. Even this week, we saw alts, especially Sol, especially ETH, really fail to hold even strength that BTC was experiencing throughout the week. Just looking at the cloud here on the 3-day, TK cross is what you're waiting for. Definitely, we can call this all sorts of wedgie stuff. I talked about that last week. But just taking this slow, despite all of the chop, taking this slow, a bullish TK cross would be reminiscent of what we saw in October 2023 on the 3-day. And I'll get into Sol and some others in a second, but I was looking for an NFT index because, again, I'm looking for things that aren't liquidity and aren't price directly related per se, that we can watch and things to pay attention to. NFTs is definitely one of them. NFTs will start to look better as attention comes back to the risk side of the equation. Bitwise has one of these non-public index funds that you can watch. This is the holdings, whatever. If you agree or disagree with what's in this, doesn't really matter. It changes every quarter based on their proprietary weightings. But the general idea here is we have something we can use that's professional to see what's going on. And in this document, they do have death of $10,000, actually not growth of $10,000. But looking at when this started, December 2021, it's down 80%. It has a discount to NAV. It is not at all-time lows for the index, but it's very close, kind of scraping off the bottom. And very similar to the other indice ideas, I'd want to see this at least back to 4,000 to be sure that the bottom is in. But ideally, you're seeing a higher high past what we saw earlier in the year. Probably that was March, I'd imagine. So again, this stuff is just nothing but death. Where in the cycle does NFT nonsense start to do well is a question to consider. But I'd assume it would happen when everything else is bullish. So yes, it's bounced. It bounced before, but ultimately, this is just ranging. Hasn't done anything. They release this, I think, every month. And it's one of the only places I know of that actually has an NFT index. So it's just something else to look at to be sure that risk is back on the crypto side of the equation. Something else we can look at, this is from DeFi Llama, VC funding in the ecosystem. You'll notice a large infusion of cash in 2018, around 2020 into 2022. Even now, decent amount of USD in a terrible environment for venture capital being pumped into projects, but we really haven't seen continuous month-over-month growth for VC funding. But again, this is something else to watch, like 2021, like 2017, where we should see money coming back into the ecosystem if we are sure that this is bullish. And if you want to get even more granular, you can look at which chains are getting which lump sums of money here. And that can be a leading signal as far as where the market thinks positive things will happen. We can also look at TVL, although I'm not a giant fan of TVL. Even TVL per chain you can look at. TVL really hasn't gone anywhere aside from the initial push in Q4 last year. But again, something to watch. Is TVL ranging or is it surging? Right now it is surging. And if I'm looking for confirmation, all of this stuff deep into Q4 this year should start to show signs of strength. NFTs bottoming, all the indices hopefully ranging instead of making lows. If you're an altcoiner, I'm happily continuing to see Total 2, Total 3, others make lows against BTC. But if you're an altcoiner, you want to see this stuff turning a corner and making higher highs. And then all the way down on the risk spectrum, this is the watch index. More of the NFT side of the equation. I think NFTs and watches are the same cohort of individuals. So you'd expect these to be correlated. And we're still not seeing any strength in the watch charts market either. You can zoom all the way out to 2021. Really not making any higher highs here, not holding any values whatsoever. So if the watch charts look like this, I wouldn't expect NFTs to look much better, right? Still making lower lows month over month on that chart. ARK is another one as we shift gears into the legacy side of the equation. ARK is, to put it generously, loaded with things that do well with surging liquidity. Okay, basically alts of the legacy land, whether that's biocap or high risk tech, long tail, whatever. Even this is starting to look longable again, potentially into Q4. And it wouldn't be unreasonable to see ARKK start to do well into Q4 along with altcoins. But this is still sideways and bottoming, at least trying to bottom, right? Now this is actively managed. It is changed basically daily. So it's not the perfect thing to watch, but even this looks like it's almost ready to make higher highs. Looking at a biotech index, specifically XBI, this looks like it has bottomed. This has spent multiple years now in this range aside from the post-COVID highs and is starting to take off again. This looks like IWM. This looks like HYG. This looks like things you would want to see in the altcoin land. A revisit of a previous high, making higher highs, maybe a little cup and handle, maybe a little Wyckoff, post-accumulation markup, anything, right? Any sort of strength. We're just not seeing that for alts, especially against BTC, just yet. But this is a great sign for the ultra risk side of the market that we're going to start seeing strength in things outside of Mag 7. Eventually, we're going to get so top heavy that based on a relative value basis, again, you're going to see people rotating into other stuff. And you're already seeing that with the biotech ETF, along with just general liquidity improving. And then just a quick contrast between that and oil. You know, this is what you don't want to see with alts. You don't want to see continuous lower highs, threatening lower lows. This looks very bearish to me. This looks ready to roll over any day. It would not surprise me if we're at 70 or below on oil, just the way this chart looks. Whereas on XBI, we're way past that and making higher highs. So this is what you want the alt charts to look like. Here's IBB, another one. Very similar to XBI, making higher highs. Looks just like HYG, which is junk bond, high risk, not a market concerned with credit or recession or any of that type stuff. Could all of this roll over and oil go to 90? Alts get further ruined? Absolutely, but we're not seeing that currently. Here's a 3x biotech ETF. Even this is looking good. 3x IWM. TNA is the ticker. This looks excellent. Alts don't quite look like this yet, but look at how some of this stuff performed going even into 2021, into the alt season. It's not like alts just magically get popular on their own. There's this fertile ecosystem for cash sloshing around the hot ball of money, whatever, that's ready to speculate on something. So to see ARK, XBI, TNA, all this stuff, IWM, even gold making breakouts, it is likely that eventually, probably November, if anything, this liquidity makes its way into alts. Here's HYG. Again, all these charts look phenomenal compared to alts, and it's just going to take time for liquidity to find its way into alts, and that includes BTC in a large margin because we haven't quite yet seen strength where you'd expect to see it into BTC just yet. But this chart also looks phenomenal. On to the rest of crypto. You know, if you're bullish SOL, if you think SOL's going to 4,000, stop what you're doing, buy SOL, stake it, okay? Nothing I'm going to say is going to matter if you think SOL is going to 4,000. It could, right? It could go to 8. I don't think so. But to see this go from 5 to sub 25 and then come back is a very good sign. So yes, I expect this to have strength. It does have risks that BTC does not, even ETH does not, as far as something going wrong with the network, something going wrong with the supply. There are risks there, but if I've got a small account, I'm not trading ETH, I'm not trading BTC. This is where I'm trading, and that makes sense. I get it. Okay, I get it. So we broke up, we ranged, we're still ranging. BTC is not bullish yet. SOL needs BTC to be bullish to get permission for continuation here. Anything above 200 is really what you want to see on the 2-day cloud. Nothing really to report. It's basically just flat ranging. But what you want to see is always the same thing. You want to see higher highs. You want to see bullish trend metrics. Because like in 2021, you don't want to miss the easy stuff. You don't want to miss the easy stuff above the range. So SOL here on the daily, where does that become easy? Anything above 190, anything above 200, anything above 210. So whatever is going on here doesn't really matter until we're above those levels. And it's easy to just ignore 160 to 200. You know, you can think you're bullish here and it chops around for another 6 months. But what's most important is that this thing gets above 200. Once it gets above 200, then we can talk. This is an Adam and Eve W double bottom, hasn't broken out yet. Previously it had a W, broke out, came back. Before that, it had an inverted head and shoulders, broke out, came back. Down here, it had an inverted head and shoulders that broke out. So the next phase here is above 200. Other than that, why should anybody care about SOL? It's ranging. Great. You should only care about this if you're convinced it's a 10x from here, it's a 5x from here, right? If that's the case, stop trading it. Start opening a lemonade stand on the corner and making more fiat so that you can buy SOL. Because that's what's going to matter. But first, this thing needs to get above 200. For ETH, still far below the cloud. A little bit of a W, Adam and Eve, ascending triangle. But again, the easy mode isn't until 3,000. Isn't until it's back above the cloud. And then it could still spend the next quarter ranging between 3,000 and 3,500 because it's still got 3,800 to contend with. And yeah, you could think this is going to be bottom and this is going to recover, fine, whatever. But ultimately, you want to see the cloud metrics flip bullish. This is likely to lag SOL in the beginning. And until you see ETFs pick up on the ETH side of things, why would anybody have any confidence in ETH? Everyone's infighting. Everyone's yelling at each other. You've got the Ethereum Foundation selling what ends up being a measly amount of ETH, to be honest. But it matters when nothing's going on. So everybody is very upset. And that just goes to show you what little has happened here price-wise. So you're not going to miss some mega move to 10K. You know, if you're just waiting until 3K. You're waiting on $300 for some confirmation here. That'll be okay. You'll make it. You'll survive. ETH does best at the beginning of the year, the first half of the year. It still has a death cross on the 5,200. Even if you had waited till November and caught the wave higher, right? You're totally fine. So my argument here again is everybody's impatient. Everybody wants us to do well, mostly because most of the people who are impatient have been sitting in this stuff and have been just bleeding for years and are kind of sick of it. But if you're trying to time this appropriately, you're waiting to see some strength here. SOL ETH also doesn't look great. SOL BTC, flat, ranging, doesn't look bullish just yet, but again, it favors BTC. So all this stuff just needs more time. BNB starting to look decent, 610, 605, anything in that range. This could be another right shoulder throughout the early stages of Q4 and then breakout after that. I don't think there's any mega rush with that one. PTON has had issues recently price-wise, and then Pavel getting snagged in France this weekend. Also not great for free speech, obviously, but also not great for the coin. And now you've got a head and shoulders set up here. So this could recover. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But it certainly doesn't scream, man, this is a great buy here. It just doesn't. Not yet. It's overperformed most of the market for the past couple months. And you need to see this basically back above 7 to care again. And it's just not there yet on trend. On the Doge side of things, we've got another pretty steep falling wedge that maybe this breaks out, maybe it doesn't. Maybe you get, again, an inverted head and shoulders with a right shoulder throughout September, maybe a pop to like 12, a shoulder low to 0.15, and then a breakout in Q4. I could see that with a neckline around 13, 14 cents. Doge is infamous for, on the USD pair, these extended, just grind you out, time-based capitulation. So there's no rush, right? You will see it on the charts. It will be obvious on trend metrics on a high time frame where you're making higher highs or you're ready to make a higher high. Just not there yet on the Doge side of things. And GME is a perfect example of that. Pre-2020, years of parabolic downtrend below the cloud, bottoms for a year, breaks out. And this is the thing you don't want to miss, right? Again, most of the alts are still somewhere in this parabolic downside. They haven't even started to bottom on price action yet. They haven't started to form a base. So you're still so early on the alt side of things. Even in the most recent pop of GME, in extended downtrend, you had very little warning that this thing was going to move from 14 to 40, but it did start to at least show some strength before that happened, right? And most of these alts don't even look this good as Doge, don't even look as good as BNB. So why bother? Here's a great example. ADA BTC, just randomly. So many alts still in a downtrend. Still, I would love to see this go below the 2019 lows. I'd love to see this make a new all-time low and then see, let's talk then. Let's see what happens. Is this oversold? Absolutely. Could this be the beginning of a double bottom, triple bottom? Absolutely. But look how many times 2019 into 2020, ADA tried to bottom 6 times, 7 times, and just didn't until it eventually made a higher high. We're not there yet for ADA BTC. This is what you want to see. Peloton, diagonal resistance break, making a higher high. Not bullish on the cloud yet, but it's early signs of life. Early signs of life. Zoom again above the 3-day cloud for the first time since 2021. I mean, that's something to talk about. That's something to get excited about. Alts are still chopping around below high time frame trend metrics. And I know I sound like I'm beating a dead horse, but if you want to look around for things and paper trade them, okay, would you rather be long Zoom and Peloton here, or would you rather be long ETH BTC? Just think about it. And then there's LULU, lastly, as an example. Looks like most alts to me. Just sort of free falling on the bear side of things, not bullish quite yet. So we're getting there, we're making progress. A lot of the riskier stuff on the legacy side has started to curl up, has started to make highs. A lot of the stuff that's left for dead over the past couple of years has started to make higher highs. So it's really only a matter of time into Q4, assuming we don't have some broad recession. And if you assume that, you shouldn't be long alts. A lot of people are these like macro bears, but they love alts for some reason. That doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. If you really think we're headed for a recession, alts are not recession proof, certainly. So we're almost there, just not there yet. That's all I have for this one. Like, dislike, comment, share, subscribe, and happy trading.